Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Klatt. I'm from a structural engineer with Frost Engineering and Consulting. My colleague David Pirchio, he's also a great engineer from Italy. He just had to step out for a project he's working on. Something just popped up, so hopefully I can cover his portion well. So yeah, just a little bit more about our firm. We're local to Mishawaka, but we're licensed around the country. So first, the question, why would you possibly move a church? There's a number of reasons listed here. I think what I'd like to focus on is a common situation in the United States is what's called the parish proximity problem, which is down in the bottom. And you'll have cities like in South Bend or in Chicago, just across the country, where you'll have 2 or 3 parishes within 1 mile. And they're beautiful parishes. There's just a great treasure of Catholic liturgical architecture there. And oftentimes they have dying populations. There's just not a lot of people there. And at the same time, we'll have parishes in other areas of the country, typically in the same city. David, yeah, sorry, go ahead. With a rising population, and they'll want to build a new church. So we have kind of this paradox situation where we have one area where there's too many and one where they need something new. So the question comes, is it possible to move a church? And then I'll let David jump into some of the historical situations.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Pirchio. I apologize very deeply for the delay here. I had an emergency that I had to take care of. But yeah, when you're looking at a project like that, the very first question that you have to ask yourself is what has been done in the past, how it has been handled. Starting from the very first example that is reported in Italy. I might be a bit biased, but it's 1455 at the bell tower of the Church of Santa Maria Maggiore. And I apologize for a second.
Breathe.
It has been moved in 30 years for a total distance of 43 feet because it was precisely in front of the access gateway to the city. Other notable example, much closer to us, the Church of Old South Heaven was moved entirely using a truck for 4 miles. Or more interesting as well, the Church of the Assumption of the Virgin Mary in Czech Republic. But the one that I like the most probably, Miavoda Orthodox Church, it was moved for political reasons. The oppressive regime of Nicolae Ceausescu was destroying a lot of historical buildings, and for historic preservation reason, the entire church was moved using a system of rails. Closer to us and to the present, in 2009, we have the Church of the First Baptist Church in Massachusetts that was moved was relocated due to the construction of the new courthouse, and it was moved using dollies, basically. Or we can also have examples in which just a part of the church, for historical reason and for historical preservation, is moved. In this case, the facade of the Church of San Rafael, the Archangel in Illinois, for which the entire facade was relocated and the rest of the church reconstructed behind it. Or for environmental risk and environmental hazard, this is the example of the Church of the Ascension of Our Lord in Alaska. It was built on a gradually sloping cliff, and in order to save the church and preserve the historical and the functionality of the parish, it was moved using rollers and bobcats for 80 feet. Well, when you're looking at a project like this, cost is surely one of the main drivers, and I will let Joe speak again so that I can bring.
Yeah. So I think a baseline for this question is because one of the biggest alternatives to moving a church is building a new one. So we just looked at some cost data from 10 recently built churches, and what we found is the average is coming in around $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 a square foot. This is just from publicly available data and basically the building footprint square footage. So this excludes extra square footage for a basement or a choir loft. All the way at the bottom end of Catholic, and this is specifically Catholic architecture too. At the bottom you have, not in quality, but just in cost, you have around $500 a square foot, and then running up to the top, you have the chapel for Thomas Aquinas College in California, which is beautiful, and it's around $2,500 a square foot. So for a typical church, American church of around 9,000, 10,000 square feet, you're talking, let's say, $12 to $14 million. Is a very rough order ballpark number for what you have to work with. Okay, the next question is how, as David mentioned in some of the historical examples, I think one of the most common approaches is to take a church and put it on dollies and literally roll it down the street. This is from Wolf Building Movers, who's one of the most prominent structural movers in the United States, and we've collaborated with them. And so basically, the advantage to this is you have everything moved in place. The disadvantage is you're really limited to a short distance, very much constrained by the route. So it's typically not a viable option for anything that's over, a couple thousand feet, depending on what is around it. If you have a church in the middle of farm fields, you can roll through farm fields, that could work great for you. But if it's a bigger size, just a concept we've explored with Wolf is breaking a church into sections, and just kind of pictorially depicted this here. Breaking a church into 3 sections, and your next question might be, what is kind of the approximate cost to do something like this? Really rough numbers, $35 million to move a 10,000 square foot church in the range of miles. And it really depends heavily on routes. Are you going over a river? How many traffic lights do you need to take down? How many trees do you need to take down? I mean, you get some huge historical tree that the city doesn't want removed. I mean, you're talking tens of thousands, $100,000 for all these obstacles. So there's just a lot of variables that come into play. Even this method itself is limited by distance. Anything outside of the range of miles is just really not practical. So for a lot of situations in the United States, you might have a church in the city that potentially maybe wants to be moved to the suburbs. And unless we're taking a small portion, like he mentioned with a church that had been moved in Illinois, another concept we explored is actually deconstructing the entire church. In this instance, we looked at a particular masonry church we were asked to look at and the possibility of moving it in sections. So just to give a brief synopsis, you'd remove the roof, take out the trusses by crane. They could be deconstructed if they're built up wood members or steel trusses. And then the walls would be cut and deconstructed. They'd be clamped and post-tensioned so you don't develop any tensile forces in the masonry. And the idea would be to remove them in sections that could be moved by truck. On the flip side, when you bring it all back together, so we actually, in a sense, commonly do this in the tilt-up construction industry. So we take entire 70,000-pound sections of walls and we place them. So you place them, they'd have to be held in place very precisely and then grouted, similar to what we do when we're doing underpinning on foundations. The next question is, what does it cost to renovate a church when it's been entirely gutted? Because if you're going to move something in sections, that's what it basically is. And that happens a little more commonly than you think in the United States, because anytime an historical church is devastated by fire, they essentially have a structural shell, which is then rebuilt. So top left is Trinity Lutheran Church in Milwaukee, which was completely gutted by fire. This represents the high end of renovation costs. They rebuilt the entire sanctuary, new roof, everything. That includes things like organs, stained glass windows. So a lot of things that you would hope would be saved in a move were not. And this is starting from scratch. $25 million is what that cost for that renovation. On the bottom right, we have, I think I'm probably butchering the name, but this is a Catholic church in New Jersey, similar situation. And where they lost the entire roof, they lost the entire sanctuary, they redid everything, and they spent $5 million on the renovation. And here you can see them replacing the steeple by crane. So that's just kind of a brief synopsis of methods, and we've been asked to look at specific instances, so it's not just theoretical on our part, but yeah, it's been a really fun question to explore, and it's something we hope to make possible. And then David's going to finish off with a decision matrix we developed.
And as you said, when we were being asked to look at a specific example, the first question that came to mind is, okay, we have 2 possible methods, there could be a combination of those. What is more viable, what is preferred, what is the preferred solution? So internally we developed a qualitative, of course, because each decision needs to be based case by case. It really depends on what you're finding in your church and in your specific case, but a qualitative decision matrix to decide which preferred method of relocating the church can be viable. And there are several criteria that you can see in here. The time for the allowed time for relocation. There are some cases in which you want the downtime of the church to be as little as possible, and of course, to contain the time, you will have to move it in bulk so that you don't have to wait for the reconstruction, and that can be one of the criteria. But the distance of the relocation, as Joe was mentioning before, moving a massive building, even in portion, might take a lot of time just for preparing the route to reach the destination. So having moving it in slices might be preferential if that is a constraint. Complexity of the layout, especially when you're deconstructing, or even if you're moving the building and the church in bulks, but in big chunks, basically, you want to follow the original construction joints. You want to assess the complexity and the geometry of the church in order to define which are the best location in which you can create your splices. Again, something that is not necessarily structural, but just an example of what can be historical value inside the church. What if there are frescoes within the wall of the church? At that point, maybe slicing the building up will mean also losing the value of that fresco. That could be an historical preservation issue like there. So it's not just about the structure when you're taking a decision such this one, especially when it comes to historically relevant building like churches. And dimension and weight of the church, of course, are two major drivers. If you want to move the church in bulks, we have reached amazing peaks with our technology in 2023, but there are still dimension and weights that we cannot handle with the current technology. So it might be necessary to slice up, to divide and apportion the church just because the pure weight of the church itself might not be feasible for moving. These are the red boxes that you see here were the specific examples for the specific cases for the example that we were asked to assess. And as you can see, we end up with a decision that is advantageous to move it in bulk, but not that much. So a possible route in this case could have been a mix-up of the two, in which some portion of the churches that are easy to bring away in separate in bulks can be done in such a fashion, while other that are more heavy or bigger can be sliced up and removed in different portion and brought in different trucks. Well, the time is running, so I will conclude this presentation and thank you all for your time and ask if you have any questions. And again, I apologize for the rushed intro.